And these other marks here are the other schools in the district. And so, is this above the proficiency line? Yeah, it's great, it's way up there. It's like 95, 96% or something like that. Okay, now ignore the horizontal line and look only at the vertical line. And notice that there's a 6-point scale across the bottom. Well, it's 5, but it's supposed to be 6. And 3 is the state average. And so if you're and this is a value added score. It's a 6-point scale, and 3 is the state average. So if you are to the right of that, then you are higher than the state average in the value that your school added from one year to the next in WKCE for that group of kids. And so you can see this quadrant is where you want to be because you're above proficient and you're above state average and proficient. You're also above the state average in value added. So that's a really cool place to be. Most of our schools, all our schools are above this way, but not everybody is over here in value added. Some of us are over here. And so what happens is that there's a disguise going on and things aren't always what they look like. If you have a 95% or 90% proficiency level, that's great, but maybe you weren't adding value so much for that group of kids. So that's another interesting piece to look at.
All the little green dots are schools, correct?
Yes.
So is there a way we can find out for study purposes who are all the green dots that are on the 100% line?
I wish we could. I know I thought about that too, Ann, but no.
Because I want to find out what they were doing and
Yeah,
do a little
right.
research.
Right. We talked about that at regional meetings where people like me from other districts are all there, and you get paper copies of these things too. You can see everybody else's scores, except that it's still new, and they didn't put the names of the district. They just had code names. They just had numbers. And so we're all like, what number are you? What number are you? So you kind of see we're sharing each other's numbers.
I can't read my
So at this point, it's still anonymous. They're asking if it's okay to not be, and we're saying, yes, just tell us, So it's still kind of new, but that's a good question. What about us? What about our district? Here's a series of slides that just give us some basic information so you have an idea of what our district is, how our district is put together. Total enrollment, we're about 4,300 kids. And why are PV and Robinwood yellowed out? Bigger schools.
We're the best.
No, that wasn't right.
That too.
With another skirt.
We're big and good.
Obviously, they're more than 100 kids bigger than the other schools. Okay.
Wow.
The percent female, I thought this was interesting. They'll look at the state. There's more boys in the schools in the state than girls. There's same thing in Franklin as the district. And look at Southwest Glen. Holy cow, they've got many more boys. Percent American Indian is about the same in all the schools. Percent Black, the thing that jumps out at me here is that we're less than the state average, less than half of the state average. Percent Hispanic, these are yellowed out because this is the highest and this is the lowest, and that's quite a disparity between the two. Percent Asian, this is yellowed out because Franklin is like 3 times the state average.
Wow.
And in our Asian population, and so we have, it's just kind of unusual, and it's reflected in our ELLs too. Percent white, oftentimes I'll ask the question, poor Kim's heard this 2 days in a row, but I'll oftentimes ask the question, what percentage do you think our kids are, what percentage of white kids do you think we have? Or how much of our enrollment is white? And oftentimes the answer is, 90 something, and it's not. It's about 80% of the district, and you can see the what it is in each one of the schools. subgroups, ELLs, we're about the state average in ELLs. And a couple of our schools are higher than the others with ELL enrollment. This is more, it's about the state average, a little bit under, but it's more than any of the other districts around us. If you go to ELL network meetings at CISA, the people who are there, now our ELL staff will go there, but the people who are there serving ELLs are reading specialists, psychologists, a librarian. They don't have staff, and they just say, here, work with these kids, because we don't have so many of them. We don't have enough to have programming, and we don't address it that way here in Franklin. We have 4 full-time ESL teachers. And students with disabilities, we're always under 10%. We're nowhere near over-identifying or anything like that. And you can see that Ben Franklin and Southwood Glen have programming for cognitively disabled students. So their numbers are a little bit higher.
Mike, is that early childhood too considered in that or not? You would?
No.
No?
I'm not sure.
Because the 2 schools that have it are highest. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what, I'm not sure about
But
that.
they also have different programs than we do.
Yeah.
That would make them higher too.
So
I'd have to check on
I
that.
thought they do, don't they? Don't they?
They don't have it.
And
It's not a big deal.
why do we have this on here twice? Probably because that
It's that
was
important.
Is that important?
9 o'clock at night.
Cross that. Did you hear?
Yeah.
Here's a profile. Here's a profile that I was talking about. The next page is the exact same thing for Robinwood. This is Pleasant View, and it has a percentage of students at each grade level. So if there's a higher percentage, this is last year's numbers. So this 13%, a little bit smaller class, is now moving over here. And the percent male and female, the ethnicity that we just looked at, these percentages that we just looked at in our subgroups, and WKCE scores. The 2 schools that are sitting here have got pretty garish WKCE scores. I mean, they're all really pretty high under our current planning or our current system, and I'll talk a little bit about how that's changing in a minute. And these are MAP growth scores. These are the percentage of students that increased from fall to spring last year. And as good as this looks, it's a disguise for the gaps that continue to be there in all of these subgroups. They're just stubbornly there. We're not alone. All the districts are in this boat, but it does speak to our programming. It speaks to RTI and all the other things that we're trying to do to get all kids to achieve.
Mike, this always looks at like data of students that are continually out of school. Is there data that shows how many new incoming every year? Because I think that's another thing that we face is
Yeah.
that we're getting huge numbers, and I'm sure Robinwood, same thing, of new kids each year, so you don't have, their scores
They're
come
not
up, but
included in that
they're not
year-to-year
gonna
thing.
show growth because
Right.
of the year
Right.
kind of thing.
Well, 2 things about that. First, any shortcoming in the data, like you're picking up, that's a shortcoming. You have to consider that in our interpretation of it. Because the data itself, by sitting on a page, really doesn't mean anything. We bring meaning to it by observations like that, by interpretations, and we say, yeah, but, and the amount of weight that you put on something is tempered by thoughts along those lines. The other thing I'd say about it is the reference to the concept of full academic year. And most of the data that gets reported in the paper and things on WKCE is for students who have been with us at least a full academic year, as defined by having been here from the previous year's third Friday count. And you'll see on some of the reports that we get for WKCE that our full academic year kids scores are there, and our non-full